discussion to run by you all while we wage the holiest of democratic wars against the Illimited, and it has to do with everyone's favorite new boogeyman, artificial intelligence. Allow me to elaborate in my usual perky over-the-top style. Specifically, this all has to do with Ubisoft's usage of said technology regarding a loading screen for their latest game, Anno 117. While Ubisoft might have always been corpo scum, I hold Blue Byte in very high regard, so I picked it up on day one, grabbed the edition with all the bells and whistles, with no regrets. I am looking forward immensely to the DLCs because Pax Romana loosely translates to Rum and Peace, a period stretching between 27 BC and 140 AD, so odds are good that we're gonna crack some skulls. Also, we're probably gonna get a little sacrilegious, considering that we're swapping from BC to AD in the Roman Empire. We're likely gonna come across a certain upstart cult and, awkward. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to kill this guy Longinus. Anyway, the current topic of discussion is this particular art piece right here, where folks from Polygon and PC Gamer have deduced that it is AI made. Yeah, I can see it. Some are reacting with, responses of all of the video games, not Anno. What drew me to Anno 1800 was its gorgeous artworks. While I can understand that to an extent, I get where you're coming from, but my sibling in Liberty, if you are playing Anno 1800 for its loading screen artwork, I think you and I played very different games. I never really got too attached with 1800's artwork. I spent too much time looking at the spreadsheets to make sure that my space-efficient beer production tiles were producing enough for my growing population. Heck, take a bop into first person on 1800 and you will see exactly how many corners got cut to make it run like it does. At the end of the day, Anno is not a game that photorealistic graphics are required for or even welcome in. It's a game of math, roots, radii, and angles. But the genie is out of the bottle now, and people are asking how much of the artwork is AI in the first place. Way to completely miss the point and sail off into the troubled seas of utter irrelevancy. I'd like to open this discussion with a question, challenging a viewpoint that I have seen multiple times across Reddit and the wider internet, that AI is killing art. Oh, is it now? Well, are these artists involved in this because they love crafting art, love the game franchise, and love the idea of contributing to it? No, they do it because it puts food on the table, operating in a system of labor under duress. When times are good, the system worked great. Corpo Scum wanted to launch a new product or advertising line. They called up the artists, got the product, money changed hands, work as intended. Artists were needed then, or at the very least, they certainly felt like they were. But behind the scenes, not all is well in Camelot. Corporations do not appreciate being reliant upon another, especially when they do not feel like they are the ones in control. They coin processes like the work-for-hire program, which, cleaving away the legalese, means anything created under a work-for-hire agreement is legally owned by the employer, not the artist. While I can't find a singular engineer for this blatant legal theft of another's labor, this goes back to 1903, folks. They've been at this for a while, and that's just the first time it showed up in court. How this all goes down is that the corporations that you do business with owns your art the second that you send it their way. You give up any rights to copyright by signing the contract. You can't reuse the designs, characters, or stories that you made, and the corpo scum that you were naive enough to do business with can fire you at any point and continue profiting from your creations forever. It is the single most powerful tool corporations have in their arsenal to strip the creative rights from the creator. I'd say it's the creative industry counterpart to right-to-work states. Sounds empowering, but the execution runs contrary to your best interests, equating to lower wages, fewer benefits, weaker workplace protections, union-busting behavior, and higher corporate leverage. That's not a right, champ. That's the removal of the collective power of the proletariat, and it's all completely legal. It's part of why I consider the letter of the law to be an extremely low moral standard. At the same time, they moved everything onto world platforms. Amazon, Spotify, YouTube in particular. Instagram, TikTok, Apple, Epic Games, that sort of thing. This means that artists no longer own their own distribution channels, can be demonetized or removed or just censored at will, are subject to the platform's terms, fees, and their cut, and an algorithm change can destroy a career overnight. Yeah, ever since I started speaking out about actual injustices, I've noticed that the old supertube doesn't bring in the views like she used to. Coincidence, I'm sure. This also allows for the platform to artist power and balance to grow every year. Everyone knows about how YouTube's policies and guidelines are improperly and non-universally enforced at the detriment of the content creator, and yet nobody does anything about it. No one can. The system is working as intended. Ubisoft's insistence on maintaining Uplay suddenly makes a whole lot more sense now, doesn't it? Sinister. People seem to think that AI is just the start of artist exploitation, but the truth is that Corpo Scum built that system long before AI ever existed. Now, before you say all of this sounds like exaggeration, hyperbole, and terms taken out of context, don't worry, I've got proof and examples. Marvel and DC are especially notorious for forcing comic artists into work for hire. Artists who created iconic characters like the Winter Soldier, Venom, Rocket Raccoon, and so on received zero royalties from billion-dollar movies. Multiple creators, such as Ed Brubaker, creator of the Winter Soldier storyline, and Jim Starlin, creator of the villain Thanos, report that they got $5,000 and a thank you note for the movies that they helped make. That is a 0.0014% and 0.00036% of the worth their creative efforts crafted, respectively. That is why I say that copyright is a tool of corporate oppression, because it objectively is, and they like it that way, with their boot on your neck. Now, not naming names here, but several months ago I had a dispute with another Helldiver because of their use of copyright to punish a community that they were no longer a part of. This is a weapon of the enemy. If this individual had used this power to go after some exploitative corporate scumbag, I probably would have him guest starring on the show where I could cheer on his efforts personally. Instead, he quoted a 380 on his own people. I could see where they voted him off the island. But hey, that's just my opinion. Taking the power of your enemy and using it back upon them for the good of all is a very XCOM thing to do. Taking the power of the enemy and team killing your own people, that's a very Exalt thing to do. All of this loops back to my opening premise where slavery is still a thing, y'all. It's still perfectly legal. Did you not read the newsletter? Just slap some green paper squares on it, call it capitalism, and people will not only willingly participate, they will fight anything and anyone that dares threaten their position as favorite dog at the table where they could lip up the crumbs that their CEO owner drops. Anything. Like AI. I didn't think artists are mad at all. They're mad that they're being replaced by AI, but let's be honest here. After everything that I just laid out, it is painfully obvious that Corpo Scum has been moving toward this future for at least the last century or so. There's a reason that I call them Corpo Scum, and not just because I like cyberpunk a lot. These people are not your friends. They are parasites, hijacking the workings of societies so that they can gorge themselves upon your efforts, and they will stop paying you the second that they feel like they no longer need you. The most ironic thing is that Anno 1800 not only showed you how this process of worker irrelevancy and the steady decline of working conditions came about, you, the player, helped them do it, both in-game and out. The backslide of workers' rights was a cornerstone of the Industrial Revolution. It's why Henry Ford, rather than pay his people a decent wage and establish safer conditions within his factories, chose to open fire on protesters. It's called the Ford Hunger March, also called the Ford Massacre. Ford's private security and the Dearborn City Police literally fired machine guns into a crowd of between 3,000 and 5,000 protesting workers. 4 people were killed outright, with another dying later. And that is pretty low considering the killing potential of fully automatic weaponry, and over 60 people were wounded. And what legal blowback did Ford face for outright murder in broad daylight against unarmed civilians? None. He had Dearborn in his pocket. When you own the factories, you own the police. When you own the police, participation in the justice system is optional. The authorities ruled it as justifiable homicide, and blame was shifted onto the marchers, being called radicals and communists. Just in case you thought that being called a radical leftist was a new scapegoat. Clearly, fascists are students of history. They're passing notes to each other through the history books. Also, as an aside, dear audience, be very careful the next time you go to a No Kings protest. Remember, these are still the same animals. They just wear nicer suits now. But, getting back on topic, Anno 1800 showed the cycle clearly. Every era of mechanization and automation brings about displacement. Jobs vanish not because the work disappears, but because machines do it faster. They don't take breaks, they don't protest, and they don't unionize. Then comes consolidation. Wealth pools upward. Always has. Saw it with Ford, saw it with the Appalachian coal companies, and you see it with the likes of Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, and EA today. Those who own the machines profit, and those who were the machines lose bargaining power. Yes, that's right. They don't see you as people. They see you as tools. And much like the last generation of iPhone, or perhaps a fax machine, you're obsolete, buckaroo. After that comes repression, sometimes forceful, or pacification, where the protesting worker class gets thrown something. Marginally better working conditions, temporary agreements that can be canceled over time incrementally, that sort of thing. You think you won, you think balance was restored, but you never gain power. You never gain control. If the lower classes gain power, the machine breaks, and the machine must never stop. Finally, you come to stage 4, what I call the spectacle of progress. The factory grows, the skyline expands, the railroads link coast to coast, and prosperity increases. At least on paper it does, and only for a certain type of person, the fat, rich, happy kind. A house in 1900 cost between 1 and 3 years of wages. Today, it's between 7 and 10 years, and don't even get me started on the outright scam that is loan interest. I swear the phrase, "they've got to make money somehow," is the most abused sentence in the English language, right up there with "I was just following orders." That is the kind of thing that the player helped set up in 1800. It's all very well spelled out, elucidated, and clear. Heck, this game got me interested in the history of the Gilded Era in the first place, and once I started reading more into what happened back then, Yeah, corpos have always been scum. The cleaner the suit and the wider the smile, the sharper the knife. Old Ferengi rule of acquisition for my nerds in the audience out there. In Anno 1800, artisans and engineers represent mechanization with the things that they create that inevitably leads to their own unemployment and obsolescence. In Anno 1800, capitalists chase efficiency and profit. In Anno 1800, innovation is seen only through spreadsheets. In Anno 1800, the winners, the players, never see the suffering they cause. Because layoffs, burnout, and workplace fatalities are not rendered with in-game mechanics. This game demonstrated profoundly the exact process of technological innovation displacing the disenfranchised time and again, where workers are rendered redundant and the socioeconomic divide widens. The player base helped engineer it and never once witnessed its direct effects. All you saw is number go up. You played a game based on history, and you completely glossed over the history. Ironic. I really hate the phrase, "history is doomed to repeat itself," because that is not what is happening here. The lesson was taught very well. The student body was just too busy drawing democratic dangly bits in their notebooks to notice, and now they all want to LARP as revolutionaries by going after AI song makers. The most hilarious part of all of this, at least to me, is say you all win. Ubisoft is already falling back on the playbook of, oh, that was a placeholder that slipped through, and regardless of whether or not that is true, they're already pacifying you. Do you really think that Ubisoft is gonna stop being corpo scum? Do you think any of this is going to magically transform them into a benevolent, consumer-loving angel corporation? If you do, you are stunningly naive. Bear in mind, this is the company that helped pioneer always online DRM and peddles XP boosters in single-player games, microtransactions in story-driven titles, aggressive DLC seasonal passes, fractured content spread across 5 editions, the outright atrocity that is Ubisoft Connect that you can't even get away from even if you bought the game on Steam. And that's just to name a few. That's all stuff that they did before AI ever came about. I'm not saying that you're wrong for being mad about this. I'm saying that you're not seeing the big picture. AI art in a loading screen? You're being mugged at gunpoint, and you're being offended at your mugger's choice of shoes. For the love of God, focus! If anything, we should be grateful to AI. Let me finish. It revealed the crafted system that we've all been subjected to over the last, at the very least, few hundred years. It stripped away the illusion that artists and consumers were ever in control. And until we confront that, the outrage over a loading screen is literally just that. Noise in the machine. Throw it in front of your eyes to distract you from what's really going on behind the screen. Anything to keep you from seeing the point. Anything to keep you from seeing the man behind the curtain.
Your leadership.